Mercedes had the fastest car in Canada. George Russell was leading the race. The championship was finally turning into a real fight again. Then suddenly, the entire car died in the middle of a corner. And what happened next may have exposed the single biggest weakness inside Mercedes. Because this was not just a mechanical failure. This may have been the moment Mercedes realized their own car is becoming too extreme to control. Russell heard strange noises before the shutdown. The electrical system completely collapsed while he was leading comfortably. And now the suspected problem points directly at the new MGUK system, one of the most important, and most dangerous, parts of Formula One's 2026 regulations. That changes everything. Because while Mercedes celebrated another victory with Kimi Antonelli, the team also left Canada facing a terrifying possibility. What if the price of becoming the fastest team in Formula One is reliability they cannot trust anymore? Antonelli now has 5 consecutive wins. Russell is 43 points behind in the championship. Internal pressure inside Mercedes is exploding. And suddenly, the team that looked unstoppable just 1 week ago now looks vulnerable in the worst possible way. Because speed alone does not win championships. Trust does. Trust that the car survives. Trust that the team protects both drivers equally. Trust that the pressure inside the garage does not destroy everything from within. And after Canada, that trust suddenly looks weaker than ever. Even Toto Wolff sounded worried after the race. Not because Mercedes lacked pace. The opposite. The car may actually be too fast for its own safety margins now. And the deeper you look into Russell's DNF, the more it starts to feel like Canada was not an isolated disaster. It may have been the warning sign Mercedes never wanted the world to see. So subscribe now if you want Formula One stories that go beyond the headlines, because this Mercedes situation could completely change the championship from this point forward. Canada was supposed to be the weekend that proved Mercedes had finally solved Formula One. The car looked unstoppable. George Russell dominated qualifying, won the sprint, controlled the opening phase of the Grand Prix, and for almost 30 laps, Mercedes looked faster than every other team in every important area. Straight-line speed, tire management, stability through the chicanes. Even the launches finally looked fixed after months of inconsistency. But that is exactly why Russell's retirement became so terrifying for Mercedes. Because failures are easier to accept when a car is slow. This car was not slow. This was a championship-level machine collapsing while leading comfortably. And the deeper you examine the race, the more obvious the hidden problem becomes. Mercedes may have pushed the W17 beyond the safe limit just to unlock this level of performance. At first, almost nobody noticed the warning signs. The cameras focused on the battle between Russell and Antonelli. And honestly, it was incredible to watch. The two teammates exchanged the lead multiple times during the opening laps. Antonelli attacked aggressively with DRS. Russell defended harder than he had all season. But underneath that fight, the car itself was already under enormous stress. That matters because modern Formula One cars are no longer just mechanical machines. They are rolling electrical systems operating under insane pressure. Especially under the new 2026 regulations. And this is where the story becomes much bigger than one retirement. Reports after the race pointed toward a possible failure involving the MGUK system. That is the electrical component responsible for converting stored energy into performance. Under the new regulations, it now works at nearly 3 times the electrical output compared to previous seasons. Think about that for a second. Mercedes increased power dramatically. But increasing power always creates another problem. Heat, stress, electrical load, and eventually, reliability risk. It is like running a gaming computer at maximum performance for hours without enough cooling. At first, everything feels incredibly fast. Then suddenly, one component overheats and the entire system crashes instantly. That may be exactly what happened to Russell in Canada. And Russell himself accidentally revealed something extremely important after the race. He admitted he heard unusual noises before the complete shutdown happened. That changes everything. Because now the conversation inside the paddock becomes uncomfortable. If there were warning signs, did Mercedes already know the system was operating dangerously close to failure? And if they suspected risk, why keep pushing the car so aggressively? The answer may be simpler than people realize. Because Mercedes had no choice. Not with Antonelli driving the way he is right now. That is the hidden pressure destroying the balance inside the team. Antonelli has become relentless this season. 5 consecutive victories. Calm under pressure. Ruthless during battles. And every race weekend, he keeps forcing Russell to push harder just to stay alive in the championship. So now Mercedes faces an impossible situation. To beat Antonelli internally, Russell must drive at the absolute limit. But to survive technically, the car may actually need less stress. And those two realities completely contradict each other. That is why Toto Wolff looked tense all weekend. Because deep down, Mercedes may already understand the truth. The W17 might currently be the fastest car in Formula One. But it could also be the most fragile. And Formula One history is filled with cars exactly like that. Cars that looked unbeatable for a few races, until reliability destroyed the entire championship fight. The terrifying part for Mercedes is that Canada may only have been the first warning sign. Because once electrical systems begin failing under race pressure, engineers start questioning everything. Energy deployment, cooling systems, battery temperatures, recovery cycles, even how aggressively the drivers are allowed to fight each other. And that last point may become the biggest problem of all. Because Russell and Antonelli are no longer racing like teammates managing a title together. They are racing like rivals trying to prove who deserves to lead Mercedes into the future. And every lap of that internal war pushes the car harder. More aggressive acceleration, more energy deployment, more stress exiting corners, more pressure on systems already operating near maximum capacity. That is why Russell's DNF feels so important. Not because Mercedes lost one race. Because Canada may have exposed the exact point where performance and reliability finally stopped coexisting safely inside the same car. The moment George Russell stopped on track, Mercedes knew this was no longer a normal reliability issue. Because the data arriving back to the garage looked catastrophic. A complete electrical shutdown during race conditions is one of the worst scenarios modern Formula One teams can face. Especially under the 2026 regulations, where electrical systems are now responsible for a huge percentage of the car's overall performance. And suddenly, inside the Mercedes garage, one terrifying question started spreading. What if this problem is not isolated? That is the fear nobody wanted to say publicly after Canada. Because when engineers begin seeing failures linked to energy systems, they immediately start worrying about patterns. Not just one broken component. Entire chains of stress inside the car. Battery temperatures, power delivery cycles, electrical load spikes during overtaking, heat buildup under pressure. Everything becomes suspect. And here is why this situation becomes so dangerous for Mercedes specifically. The team finally achieved what it spent years chasing. Pure speed. The upgrades brought to Canada clearly worked. The car gained major performance in qualifying. Better balance through the chicanes. Stronger traction. Improved starts. Russell's launch from pole was one of Mercedes' best all season. But Formula One engineers understand something fans often do not see. When a car suddenly becomes dramatically faster, it usually means something is being pushed much harder underneath the surface. There is almost always a trade-off. Sometimes it is tire wear. Sometimes it is overheating. Sometimes it is reliability. And Canada may have revealed Mercedes' trade-off in the worst possible way. Because the suspected MGUK issue matters far beyond one retirement. This component is now operating at around 350 kilowatts under the new rules, nearly triple the electrical demand compared to previous systems. That is an enormous jump. Imagine taking a normal household electrical system and suddenly tripling the amount of power running through it every single day. At first, everything may appear fine. But eventually, weak points start appearing where the system simply cannot handle the pressure anymore. That is exactly what Mercedes engineers are now terrified of discovering. And the timing could not possibly be worse. Because the calendar is moving fast. There is almost no breathing room between races. That means Mercedes must investigate a potentially massive reliability concern while simultaneously trying to manage an internal championship war between Russell and Antonelli. And emotionally, the two drivers are now moving in completely opposite directions. Antonelli looks unstoppable, confident on the radio, calm under pressure, completely comfortable leading races and controlling weekends. Russell looks emotionally drained. Not because he lacks speed. Actually, Canada may have proven the opposite. Russell looked fast enough to beat Antonelli directly. That is what makes this situation so psychologically damaging. Because drivers can recover from being slower. Recovering from losing due to mechanical failure is much harder. Especially when your teammate benefits immediately from your disaster. That emotional imbalance changes how drivers approach future races. And Formula One history proves it repeatedly. Once drivers stop trusting the car completely, tiny hesitations begin appearing everywhere. Braking zones, corner exits, energy deployment, risk calculations during overtakes, even confidence in strategy calls. That is why Mercedes now faces a hidden problem bigger than raw reliability. The relationship between Russell and the team itself may have been damaged in Canada. And if that trust continues weakening, the consequences could become enormous later in the season. Because Russell already hinted at a completely different mentality after the race. He openly admitted the championship pressure had disappeared. He said he now feels he has nothing to lose. That sentence should genuinely worry Mercedes. Drivers with nothing to lose become unpredictable. Sometimes brilliant. Sometimes destructive. And right now, Mercedes cannot afford emotional instability inside the garage. Not while Antonelli keeps extending his championship lead every single weekend. Not while reliability fears are growing internally. And not while the rest of Formula One is beginning to realize something extremely important. Mercedes may have built a car so fast that even Mercedes themselves no longer fully understand where the limit actually is. And now Mercedes enters the most dangerous phase of the season. Not because the car is slow. Because the pressure inside the team is becoming impossible to control. Canada changed the emotional balance completely. Before Montreal, Russell still felt like a driver fighting for the championship on equal terms. Yes, Antonelli had momentum. Yes, the young Italian was winning races. But Russell still believed he could stop the momentum with pure performance. Then Canada happened. And suddenly, the entire psychological structure inside Mercedes shifted. Antonelli left with another victory. Russell left questioning everything. That difference matters more than most fans realize. Because Formula One championships are not won only through engineering. They are won through emotional stability under pressure. And right now, Mercedes may be losing that stability very quickly. Think about what happens next inside the garage. Engineers begin investigating the failure. Meetings become longer. Data analysis becomes obsessive. Every electrical component gets reviewed repeatedly. And during all of that, Russell keeps replaying the retirement inside his head. The noises before the shutdown. The sudden loss of power. The feeling that victory disappeared through no fault of his own. Drivers never forget moments like that. Especially when championships are slipping away. And this is where the situation becomes incredibly dangerous for Mercedes strategically. Because now they face two completely opposite priorities at the same time. Priority number 1. Protect reliability. Priority number 2. Keep maximizing performance to maintain their advantage over Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. The problem is, those goals may now directly conflict with each other. If Mercedes reduces performance settings to protect the car, they risk losing the speed advantage that made them dominant in Canada. But if they continue pushing aggressively, another failure could destroy the championship completely. That is the trap Canada created. And there is another layer making this even worse. Russell and Antonelli are probably forcing the car harder than Mercedes originally expected. That is what happens when teammates stop racing cooperatively and start racing emotionally. Every battle becomes more intense. Every acceleration zone becomes more aggressive. Every qualifying lap becomes desperate. And under the 2026 regulations, electrical systems experience enormous stress during exactly those moments. Now suddenly, Mercedes must ask itself an uncomfortable question. Are the drivers accidentally helping destroy the reliability of the car just by fighting each other this hard? That sounds extreme. But Formula One has seen situations like this before. Teams build dominant cars. Then internal rivalries force both drivers to push beyond safe operational limits consistently. At first, the speed looks incredible. Then the failures begin appearing. And once failures start, panic usually follows. That panic is what Mercedes desperately wants to avoid now. Because panic changes team behavior instantly. Engineers become conservative. Strategists become nervous. Drivers stop trusting calls from the pit wall naturally. And small mistakes start multiplying everywhere. The terrifying part is that Mercedes cannot even fully calm the situation internally right now. Because Antonelli keeps winning. 5 consecutive victories creates a completely different atmosphere around a driver. Confidence grows rapidly. The garage starts naturally believing that driver will deliver results every weekend. And when one side of the garage gains momentum emotionally, the other side feels pressure increasing automatically. Russell almost certainly feels that pressure now more than ever. Especially after publicly admitting the championship may already belong to Antonelli. That statement was not normal frustration. That sounded like a driver mentally exhausted by circumstances outside his control. And exhausted drivers become unpredictable in Formula One. Some become reckless. Others become emotionally disconnected from the team. Some stop communicating openly with engineers. Others begin forcing risky situations on track, trying to compensate for lost ground instantly. Mercedes now has to manage all of those possibilities simultaneously. And the rest of the paddock is watching carefully. Because rivals understand something important after Canada. Mercedes may finally have the fastest car in Formula One. But underneath that speed, there may now be cracks spreading everywhere. Reliability fears, internal tension, emotional instability, championship pressure. And if even one more major failure happens in the next few races, this entire Mercedes project could suddenly spiral from dominance into chaos faster than anyone imagined possible.